part of what we try to do is really value the listener's time and really engage them and entertain them. And so there's a show about cacao and wild cacao that we did called Wild Chocolate. But the way we pitched it was, and it's ultimately an environmental story, but we pitched it as an Indiana Jones of chocolate. Or we did a story that was about a Soviet cosmonaut who got stuck in space because the Soviet Union disbanded beneath him, and he was stuck there for 300 plus days. And his only connection to the world was this ham radio operator in Australia that he managed to connect with. Or I did a show that ended up being much more personal than I was expecting, but it was about how astrology is seen so differently in the East than the West, and the ways that it's such a pseudoscience here, and it's a way of life in India, and these stories that felt really fun and emotional and like big adventures, and in some ways we were trying to go against the grain of at least in the beginning of all the really long chat shows that were going on for like 3 or 4 hours. Like these were things that were meant to pull you in and entertain you, and at the end of the day, leave you feeling smarter.
Yeah, we were just talking before kicking things off about some of our favorite sort of YouTube shows, and there's this model of just like bring people together, put them on some couches, IKEA couches maybe, and just banter. And, I think like I'll give some props. It's still longer form. And so there's opportunities to at least, dive into a little bit more depth of content. It's not necessarily always educational content. But there's a lot more work that goes into telling a story about cacao, which could be interesting, but I could also see this be, you could imagine a lecture and something that's informational, and people obviously have short attention spans. What are some of the ways that you break past and you've been able to, because also your shows are among the most listened to shows on Apple Podcasts, and you won a few awards.
Yeah. And to be clear, like I actually really value really long sort of interview shows. And I think different shows have different purposes, right? And so in the same way that sports radio, people would turn it on and keep it on in the background as you're like maybe painting a room or something to keep you company as you're doing that. The commute to work, where you might have 25 minutes or 30 minutes in a car and you want to be told something very clearly, or you want to learn specifically about markets or whatever, right? Like every podcast has its own flavor, but also purpose. And so I think we went in very intentionally with the idea of telling these really gorgeous stories. And we tried to invest in the sound design in a way that other people hadn't. We tried to look at the space in a way that, especially like if you think about when we'd started this company, it was coming out of the pandemic. And so it was, people had been stuck in their houses for a very long, and the lockdown period, people had been stuck in their houses. They'd still had this like tremendous wanderlust, and to be able to place someone in a different environment through their earphones was something that we felt was really meaningful.
And how many shows do you have out right now?
How many shows have we done?
We've done more than 10, and we have another 10 to 12 coming out this year. And I think about half of the portfolio of what we do is going to be weekly, more chat-style content, and half is going to continue to be these highly produced cinematic stories.
I mean, in my mind, what we're really trying to do is always create someone's favorite show, right? And when I was at iHeart, we did a show called Call Your Grandmother, and it was an 80-year-old host and a 90-year-old host, and they were like a hoot, and you wanted to spend time with them, and you, at the end of this like half an hour with them, you're reminded how much you love your own grandmother, and and for someone like me whose grandparents have all passed, it was just such a pleasure, and to be able to create that space. There's so many flavors of show to provide that I think, and there's so many lanes. I don't really think of other podcasts as competition, right? I just think there's space to really sort of provide something beautiful and let audiences find it and evangelize it. I really do think good content makes its own luck.
So I want to talk about this format, and we're going to go a little meta, and maybe you can even imbue some some sage wisdom on me and my team as we're trying to figure out how to build our own. Again, I really don't know if this is a show. I think like right now I'm thinking about it more because, and you will be the first to tell me, right, that like when you pitch an idea for a show, there's a really coherent sort of like framing. You have a sense of the format, and we're still experimenting. And so I'm trying to give myself a little bit of wiggle room to really kind of see what works and see what works for our guests. Well, that's fun.
I mean, you find the format in the doing, right? So you don't have a firm launch date. It's quite nice because you can iterate until you find exactly what works for you, and then take that out as the product. Or you can launch it and iterate it in progress, right? I mean, you see, especially these more chat-driven formats, you see how much they evolve from episode 1 to episode 10 to episode 100, right?